Hey, Chuck, it's all yours.
Okay, let's see. I gotta click on, got it. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see that. It's really good to be with you. I'm no stranger to A and V. I've given two book talks for A and V. One of them was at the beer garden in Westover. And another session that we had, I don't know if any of you all were there at that one. That was just before COVID. The other one was at some retirement facility near the Central Library. I can't remember the name of it, but we brought Zoe, who's our therapy dog. And she did about 20 tricks. And as Gary said before we came on here, before you all joined us, he said everybody really had a good time there and they got to hold her and everything. And Zoe's on a regular schedule. By the way, this is about create your own world. Going off on a little tangent, but Zoe's on a regular schedule throughout Arlington all year long. She's at Cherrydale Rehab, Walter Reed Home Care Center, and she goes and puts on this little Helping Paws program. My wife's there, and we bring all these different things, a hoop she goes through and a tunnel and all kinds of things. So we did that for ANV. It's good to be here anyway. Anybody go to any of those?
Yeah, I was at those.
Gary, you were at both of them, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, like Gary said, see, this is a little different than like me giving a book talk and then at the end having Q&A. You can join in anytime. And if Mike says something and, Mary or whoever wants to counter what Mike says, we can go back and forth. So it's sort of an open discussion. I got this might become kind of a little small book, later. I gave it at Walter Reed Adult Center about a month ago, and everybody had a one-page handout, two-sided. So we're not able to really do that, except Carolyn's going to flash up what's on those on that handout. And that went real good. We cross-ventilated across, somebody say something and somebody would approach that person with their viewpoint, and it was very dynamic. I don't know if we'll be able to do that here, but we can try. So like Gary said, just rather than wait till the end, when maybe if you're like me, you forgot what your question was, go ahead and butt in. It's wide open. This starts out, I guess we need the first slide. This starts out really with me letting everybody know that everybody counts, and that you're really significant. And we have to figure out who are we and what do you want to be? Most of us are already there because we're perhaps 55 plus, but I found that we need to be persistent and have a positive attitude. And hopefully this Zoom today might change the way you approach things so that you become more happy. That's my goal, is that we have got to be more happy in this unstable and complicated world. Now, survival of the fittest, I made stubby notes to myself on that. What I mean by survival of the fittest is not that the strong live and the weak die, or according to Darwin, rather it's that the persistent ones with a positive attitude, they're the ones that survive. I'm probably going to repeat this a couple of times throughout. That I've really learned, and even recently on something that seemed to be impossible to accomplish, I was able to accomplish it. And persistence was the key. Not being a pest and not, using humility, but in ways just staying with it and staying with it. And there was a kind of a big thing I was able to accomplish. It took 9 months, just a little bit off and on, staying on course, and that worked. So that's big. Just think about the actions that you've taken that reflect in other people's life, decisions, and their future, hopefully for the good. I can remember, I was in the military, 2 Vietnam tours as a ranger and master parachutist, and a lot of battles and all that, the horrific part of war. And then I taught at George Washington University's business school for 17 years. And I realized it at the time, but I realize it even more now, that I really made an impact on students, especially when they came to my office and we went one-on-one, which kind of geared them towards their future career, the choice of a career, and that kind of thing. There's a note I made to myself that is one of the bottom lines of this little presentation, is that none of the present situation makes any sense to me. Why can't people realize that we need each other? That's what this is all about. To me, for example, and this is very casual today, so everybody feel exceptionally casual, join in or whatever. I feel so good when we bring little Zoe, who's right here. She's supervising me to make sure I don't mess up this morning. I'll hold her up to show you later at the end. When we walk out of there, whatever place it is, hospitals, rehab, the assisted living, and she's done her program. It's about a 40-minute thing. She does all these tricks. They get to hold her. She goes through a tunnel and ends up at each one of the feet of each one of them, and they give her a little treat. I feel so good. I just have this wonderful feeling when I walk out, because we've made them happy. They're all smiling. They grab Zoe and say, "I love you." It's just wonderful. We have fabulous pictures. Somehow we have to overcome being so involved. This you'll probably hear 3 times today. I don't know, but we're spending time on issues and things that we can't make an impact. And if we can't make an impact on it, we're wasting our energy. Think about that. That's my big point. By the way, that's in my amazing Fireside Thoughts book that was 2 books ago. But if you haven't read that, you might want to get that, or I can get a copy to you. It's kind of a self-help book. The relevant quotes that Carolyn's putting up now are on the back of the 1-page handout. Now, if you want to make a comment in real time, just do what Gary said and off mute yourself, and because there are 6 quotes that I came up with that are relevant to what this create your own world is all about, which I'll get into in just a minute. You are important and you exist for a reason. Okay, we can just keep going through them. You're much stronger than you realize, and you can read that by J.W. Lynn. A lot of people don't think they're worth very much, and they're worth a lot more than they think. Okay. And then I like to start this create your own world out that you're important, and you can bring things, and a lot of you have already done this, of course, to this world that nobody else can. Okay. Rumi is, you may know, the greatest poet in the world of all time. He says, stop acting so small. You are the universe in a static motion. Dalai Lama, this is kind of cute. If you think you are too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito.
It took me a while to figure out what this one meant.
Yeah, that's that's up for grabs, I'd say. Okay, then the last one is my own, because I'm a free thinker. I'm not necessarily a Democrat or Republican, because I don't like to be pulled into something that I might not go along with everything. So don't let others control your mind and your emotions. I think this one is good for like young people that get wrapped up into cults and all kinds of different things. Okay. What do we got next, Carolyn? Okay, so that's background. What's all this about? Okay, I think that this is, I came up with this about 3 months ago, so it's relatively recent. I think it's a rather clever approach that will change your life when we get through this Zoom today. Hopefully, you might take on some things that will make you happier. Because we're all on a lifelong journey, and there's been ups and downs, but now we just need to be happy. And when you're happy, that spills off to all people around you that you don't even realize you've changed their life, because they say, gosh, look at Carolyn, she's so happy, and it gives them some spark. What do we got next, Carolyn? So now, getting to it, why create your own world? Well, a lot of people are depressed, very disappointed, and all of that causes stress. So some of you might want to come in now. When I do this in person, like I did at Walter Reed, they have a form here to fill out. They take about 5 minutes and list things that make them happy, and on the other side, things that upset them. Now, some of the things I'll read from real people that I got from the last one. The unsustainability, using up our resources, war, waste of lives and resources. Another one, gun violence in the schools and restaurants and whatnot, out of hand. So I'll just read a couple from each one there. Crime, climate change, misinformation, and I might add disinformation. I mean, how do you believe things anymore just because it's on the news or it's on one of the social media. How do you know what you just read is true? Because the Walter Cronkite days are basically over, where it was just objective news, kind of like 1440 does now. Actually, 1440, I just joined that about a month ago, and they're about the only one out there that just gives you straight news, no bias or poor customer service, this person wrote down here. Yes, you all can relate to that one.
What is 1440?
Pardon?
What is 1440?
Okay, 1440 is something that you can join, and it's free and everything, but what they do is every morning they send you the bottom lines of the news. Again, in Walter Cronkite fashion. Matter of fact, some of the reviews of it, of the members, it's growing, is that finally we have Walter Cronkite type reporting, which has been lost for a few years. I can send you that if you want. I can send it to you, and you can get it to everybody in ANV. I recommend it highly. So, getting ahead of myself, but Carol and I talked about this before we came on. I gave up the Washington Post about 3 years ago. Oh, wait, when I was a kid around here in Arlington, I delivered 250 Washington Post papers every morning. So, and for my doctorate, one of the people I interviewed was the president of the Washington Post. So I'm kind of a Washington, and also when I was a professor, I used to consult for them. They'd always call up, ask me questions on things that they needed answered right away. So if anybody quit the Washington Post, you'd think I'd be the last one. But I was getting tired of it, like Carolyn said, so I don't get the Post. And I used to go in my car and WTOP would be on, weather and traffic on the 8, as soon as I got in there, news, no news in my car anymore. When you get in my car, it's all music, Escape, Spa, 50s, 60s. That's it, nothing else. Because it gets into your mind and it upsets you. Okay, this one here, I'm just reading a few. This one here, getting back to the things that cause you to be disappointed. The political divide in the country, and kind of reminds me of Lincoln, a house divided against itself cannot stand. Very true. See.
I don't think it's one of these things that has people upset right now. I think it's the fact that it's all of these things.
I agree with you. Now,
everybody just feels so weighed down by it.
Yeah. Okay, so right here, we usually pause and they fill out the things that they feel like this is what really disappoints me and causes me to be depressed. So this is a time, like Gary said, if you want to unmute yourself and let us know what depresses you the most and that's going on in the world. I don't mean personal things not necessarily, but just, misinformation, disinformation, political divide, hatred, greed, selfishness. What is it that kind of gnaws at you, that causes you, frankly, to just be very disappointed and sad? Anybody want to join in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. One of the things is, it seems like every week I see more and more reports of violent crimes happening right here in Arlington. I've lived here pretty much my whole life, and it never seemed as bad as it's gotten, the last 6 months.
Yeah, I lived here a lot, my dad was in the military, went to the Pentagon, but, I went to a school here, elementary school, middle school, high school and everything, and I never saw any of this. Of course, back in my day, I'm a little older than you, Alan, you're a youngster, but we never locked our door. We had windows open at night. Our car was in front over there in South Fairlington. Car windows down. Nobody stole anything really. I mean, it was very unusual. Like you were saying, here in Arlington, I'm really surprised at what's going on. People beat up in Clarendon, just all these kind of things that we never saw really much of. Anybody else got any comments on things that are going on that are disappointing to you? So Gary, they just unmute themselves, right?
Right. And we got a comment in the chat, a quote from James Thurber, that you can fool too many of the people too much of the time. So I don't know if that commenter wants to expand, but I think they're commenting on all the misinformation and disinformation you talk to, and how many people just seem to swallow it whole.
Yeah. So people kind of think about something you might tell us before we move on. But like, I really don't understand this lying, cheating, and stealing. Of course, I'm a little different there because, I went to West Point, so they really hammer duty, honor, country in you, and you carry that burden on your shoulders the rest of your life. And of course, you don't lie, cheat, or steal, and you always tell the whole truth rather than the half truth, and all those kind of things. So I realized that a lot of that is pretty well torn down because you see a lot of betrayals, a lot of fraud, and in our own government and in our own country. And so it just seems like we're trying to hang on to a democracy that's being fragmented. Anybody got any other views on things that bother you? Of course, you could say Home Depot, that not many people are there to help you, and the ones that do help you don't know anything. Yet it's still the place to go for a lot of things. Anybody got anything?
It does bring up the fact that trying to get help from anybody is, really, really hard. I needed to get through to the IRS and could not get through to them. Finally ended up having to go to Don Byer to get my question answered, to get him to ask the IRS to call me to answer my question. You cannot get people to help you anymore.
Was Don successful?
His office was, yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point, because I guess all of us have run into that. You first of all, you can't get a live person on the phone usually. Or if it's IRS, your question is very important to us. The holding time is 20 hours and 10 minutes. So yeah, that's a problem. We were talking about that a couple of days ago, and wherever you go, it seems like whether it's a restaurant or a retail store or whatever, there's not many people, or even assisted living places. There's people there, but they don't seem to know very much and have had little training. So that's one thing. Okay, Mike, any others?
Chuck, we've got somebody in the chat mentioned gun violence as something that they're bothered by.
Yeah, right. Okay, is that on the chat?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll write that down. That kind of backs up Carolyn on her violent crime comment.
Let me do one thing on the violent crime. Because we got both in Arlington, we've also got it nationally. And I think we don't give it quite enough credit to the fact that when you had the COVID, you really turned the whole structure of the country on its head. And what that meant was all these social bonds that encourage people to behave properly got shattered. And nobody has really made as much effort as I think they ought to rebuild that. And it really is too bad. And I think also the whole idea of the MAGA people who want to say the culture is no good and do what you can and we don't support the government. Again, you take away these supports and people will behave badly. I mean, that's the guy, this crazy guy in New York who choked somebody to death again, for the similar reasons.
Yeah.
Something has to be done about that.
Yeah, good point, Mike. Anybody else before we move on? But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to go over mine, but if you can see this tablet, there's about 8 pages here, line of things that I think bother me. You know, I mean, think about it. There's just tons of things. But let's talk now about that. And you, by the way, you can follow up by sending me an email that here are some things that bother me, because you haven't had time to do that here, like if we were meeting in person. Okay, now, here's why I think we need to create our own world. And I have to make it clear, because a lot of people don't understand this part, is that it's not that we're ignoring what's going on. And we're not going to live in a cocoon, but like I said here, but you can live in your world made up of those things you love, that you have a passion for, that makes you happy. We deserve to be happy. We should walk around with a smile on our face. We should laugh. Laugh at yourself. I laugh at myself sometimes. But, you know, we don't want to go through life and not be happy, but this is a way to do it. And here's some things I've done that I'll pass on. And here's where, again, at the end of these 2 or 3 minutes, I'd like to hear what makes you happy. Here's where I'm putting emphasis on it. Here's things that I'm writing off to develop my own world. And don't forget, each one of us is infinitesimal. I mean, we're like a smaller than a pinhead. If I had the globe here, you'd be right here, a little tiny thing, you know? So that can be your world, because the big world is, like we've said before, is a little bit unstable and complex. And there's a lot of things going on we don't like. We don't like corruption. We don't like fraud. We don't like these selfish people. We don't like these liars and this misinformation and disinformation. I mean, we don't like any of that. So what Carolyn and I talked about before we came on was that, like, I've given up the Washington Post because I don't want to waste my time reading that when each morning, I have a 5-paragraph of the top news that main important issues that I need to know about. And then there's a few more under that, but so it's real quick. So I'm up to speed on things. So that's what I mean. It's not that you're going to be distant from society and creating your own world, but you're having, now you are changing maybe to work on and spend time on the things that you really like. So, like I told you before, when I get into my car, it used to be WTOP, news, weather and traffic on the 8, no more of that. Now, I think I just mentioned it to Carolyn before we came on. Now it's escape, spa, 50s music. When you walk into my car, no news ever on the radio in my car. Okay, because I don't want that to affect me. You know, I'm going to get it later on if it's really important stuff. Okay, and also that 1440 I told you about, that's another thing in the morning. It's just boom, 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 bottom line. Okay, some political, some global, some event, important thing, and straight talk. Gardening, like I really like to garden, so I'm happy out there, you know, with flowers and taking care of those different things. We have about half an acre and we're off of Lorcom Lane, so it's pretty big trees, been here since George Washington probably, and shrubs and everything. When you go out in my backyard, we have a little tiny pond with a little waterfall and fish in it, and we've got one frog. We call her Frederica. We found out she's a female. So, and so reading, my wife and I read one novel after another. As soon as we put down through Kindle, put one down, boom, we start another one. Reading, writing, gardening, pets. We got 2 Yorkshire Terriers. I told you one is a certified therapy dog. So those are the things that, some of the things that I try to spend more time on rather than wasting my energy on things that are going on that I cannot impact. So you might think about that too. Now, do we have time, Carolyn, to ask people what makes them happy?
Your question, I understand what you're saying, that we should focus more on, but and get your news from a trusted source that you take in small doses. I get that. But when I do that, it makes me feel really disconnected. And that's the problem with it, is finding that balance between totally cocooning and doing my own thing and finding some connection with the greater world.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought I covered that, but I understand your point, and that's a good one. The thing is, like I had said, you're not blocking out the world, because you follow the world through, like the way I follow it is by getting the top issues described in like paragraph form, about like that, every morning. So I'm up to date on it. When I take a quiz on, the news, how are you up to speed? Out of 10 questions, I either get 8, 9, or all 10. So it's not like I'm in a cocoon. I'm really not, but I'm into something that really makes me happy, because I won't use any, right? But you know, you got people that say that they're going to say that the election is not fair at the senatorial level before the election even occurs. I'm gonna attack the results. Hadn't even started yet. Who are these people? Or I'm gonna support this guy that gave away these top secret things, a representative in Congress. I'm going to support that person. I mean, I don't know where these people come from. So, you know, tell you the truth, I don't even want to know about it because it's too upsetting. Got to get away from those upsetting things that you can't do anything about anyway. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I could jump in and amplify a little bit on what I think I heard Carolyn say is part of living in this area is we're constantly surrounded by people who are absolutely plugged into everything all the time. And it's, you know, that kind of stuff is part of the air we breathe and the water we drink. And it's been our lives for decades. And I don't think it's something you can just turn off like a light switch. I think it's something that may take a little time to decompress from that. So, you know, that feeling of being disconnected when you start down that path, I think I totally understand that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Carolyn's got a good point too. So, you know, I guess that's really good information because probably it has to be gradual. But you've got to break off from that because it's not doing you any good. It's not doing you any good to be around negative people. It's not good to be around people that thrive on that. You know, that's why you may not like this, but I'm not on any social media, Facebook, Twitter, any of those. There's too many scams on there. I tried it at one point. That's is that making me happy to be on social media where a lot of people are just full of bull on there? A lot of them. Stories are made up. Again, going back to misinformation and disinformation, those social medias thrive on that. So I don't want to be into that. Not when I have these other things I told you about. I'd rather be reading a really good classic book than spend time on that. But I think there's Anita, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. You can't, I'm not just saying break off and go into cocoon because creating your own world isn't, like I said before, you're not going to be in a cocoon, but you're going to be spending the time on what you really like. And, you know, we're into pickleball, big social family, wonderful people. We do all kinds of things together. So I'm not saying that you're going to be a homesteader or anything like that, but we have to do more of this to be happy. Play mahjong.
We've got a couple of additional comments in the chat about things that make people happy. One of them is hobbies, you know, building models, mosaics, that kind of stuff. And the other one is giving to charity and volunteering, which I'm sure a lot of the people on this call can appreciate because a lot of us do those things.
Okay, what charities was it?
Well, like a lot of people give to Arlington Neighborhood Village or the Food Assistance Center or, you know, various other charities in Arlington and nationally as well.
See, yeah, I mean, and that's good. You're still hobbies. I mean, like pickleball is big for me. I mean, I go into the state tournaments and all that kind of stuff, and we have a great group and everything. So I'm not saying you're, you know, just living in this little bubble or anything, but that bubble is a happy bubble, but you still have these other things. And I think you have to slowly, if you go along with this, if you can slowly divorce yourself from those things. And I know that's hard, like Anita said, but you're going to be better off. You're not going to have that stress. You're going to be able to sleep soundly at night. You know, why have trouble sleeping at night? Because you're worried about what somebody said in Congress about a certain issue, which was really off the wall, you know. And from that, because like Anita said, people are streamlined into all this. And if that doesn't bother you, you know, you're thinking about that when you're trying to go to sleep. And then here's this other thing, and here's something else. You know, it's like I've said right there, you deserve to be happy. So you have to.
We've got
Yeah.
another comment here that exercise is a great antidote for depression and, you know, sadness and worries. That if you're not physically active, that's something to get more into.
Okay, I'm writing these things down based on your feedback. And that's a good one too. And the hobbies thing was good. If you like mahjong, play mahjong, chess, card games, bridge, whatever, you know, those you enjoy, you know, you're with people there. And what was that one again? Exercise. Exercise is terrific. I mean, my wife has a problem with her foot due to some sloppy surgery done on an ankle replacement. Long story, too long for this broadcast. But she does 3 miles on the treadmill every day and 100 sit-ups. And she's going to be 80 in October. I better remember that date. Okay. So that's exactly right. Whoever came up with exercise, because that keeps your circulation going, blood to the brain, and you know all that. So, you know, if you're running or you're speed walking, or you're playing tennis or volleyball, or even cornhole. I have a cornhole set. If anybody's played that, it's a great game. So don't get the idea on how to create your own world, is that, again, we've said it probably 3 times, that you're locked in, and then throw away the key, you're still operating and everything, but you're not letting things bother you that you can't impact because it's a waste of energy.
Chuck, just so you know, we're about 6 minutes to 11.
Okay.
Let me do one thing, and you actually got very close to it a second ago. I think one of the things that you have to consider is this whole business of what I would call perspective. And the classic example, I'll show you. The classic example of this is that I have a daughter now 38, but she went through her entire teenage years without ever being disciplined, sent to a room, anything. And the reason why, she wasn't a perfect child, but every time I observed what she was doing, even it was weird, I said, well, that's clever. How did she think about that? And I always tried to understand what was going on. And I was fascinated by what was going on in a teenage youth. But it goes even further. And I'll give you the other example, which is on these police shootings. Police shootings are horrible. There's no question about it. On the other hand, people don't quite focus on the fact that almost every single one of the policemen who's done these horrible things has left his house every morning worried he's going to be killed in the next couple of hours, because that's what happens to policemen. And that has got to really factor in a lot of what goes wrong. And that's has a lot to do with the gun culture. If you would take the gun away, it would be certainly much less threatening to the policeman, and they'd be much less likely to overreact. And that's what you got to think about this stuff. And there's almost always a good reason why bad things happen. And if you understand that, that helps you relax.
I love those points, Mike. That's very good. Especially about the police. My wife and I took a trip to a school reunion up in New York over the weekend or last week. And, I saw a car pulled over and the policeman all alone. They should be in buddy teams, really. But anyway, so I was going up to the window of the driver of the car that he had pulled over. And you're right, that they never know if that person's going to shoot them. I mean, they're there to ask them for their driver's license and identification, but you hear about it every once in a while. The fellow pulls out a pistol, shoots the policeman, and drives off. So you're right about that. When they leave in the morning, and especially the family members, don't know if their dad's coming back that night after work. Most people go to work, maybe it's 8 to 5. They kind of feel like, well, I'm going to get to work and I'm going to come home. But the police not necessarily that way. On top of that, but it's worth a 30-minute discussion alone, is some of these policemen today are not fully trained, but if you look at the big viewpoint, some of the people that were at the first session of this Create Your Own World, they were upset about two things. Irresponsibility and unaccountability. Okay, overall, on the part of organizations, the government organizations and everything else. And that irresponsibility and unaccountability is leading to sort of a division in this country, that this is what they've said, that it kind of weakens the idea of democracy. Anybody else got something on the happy list or the other list, that things that don't make you happy? What do we got next, Carolyn, on the slide? Questions and answers. Well, we've done some of that as we've gone along, but now if we got one more minute or so, I don't know how much longer that you go. If you certainly have any questions or other comments, I'd love to hear from you, from either email, message, text, or a phone call for that matter. Do they have that information, Gary?
Hang on a second and I'll pull it up.
Okay. But while he's doing that, does anybody have anything to say? Because we're sort of wrapping up now. Dolores,
We got
anything?
a comment from somebody that they get a daily email with inspiring quotes, and that's always a nice way to start the day.
Okay.
And can you see your contact info?
Yeah. Yeah, if you could take that down if you want to follow up. And I'd be glad to meet anybody for coffee to talk about these things, because each one of these things that we've mentioned, we could probably talk about for 30 minutes alone, because they're really important. But I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm just encourage you, take a look at everything. And are you wasting energy thinking about things that I don't say they don't matter, but that you can't do much about? because for the third time today, I'm just saying it's a waste of your energy when you can be putting that energy in things you love to do. You know, whether it's mahjong, some form of exercise, gardening, reading, a good book. I can't wait at night. My wife and I lay in bed and read a book every night. And it helps you fall asleep, by the way, too.
We've got a comment here, mentoring a young person is
Yeah.
a really positive thing. I know ANV has a pen pal program with one of the local schools. And so we've got a bunch of people that write letters back and forth to the different kids.
By the way, that one's really important. I mentor continually 4 cadets at West Point, you know, and so I'm an outside mentor and I help them with certain things. And then when I go up there, I take them out to dinner and that kind of thing. And of course, I mentored a lot of them at George Washington University while I was teaching there. So mentoring, I don't know who came up with that one, but that's really a good one, because you're helping somebody, and I guess that's what this creating your own world is. It's helping yourself to ward off all these demons, you know, and help people, because that's what we need to do, and that's what ANV does. And we've helped a couple of members that are of ANV, their neighbors, but previously. So ANV does great stuff, and it's really good for Arlington. So
I think on that note, Chuck, we can't finish with a better idea. So this has been very provocative and inspiring. It's really helpful for us to hear how you are organizing your thinking about it and some of the tools that you're using to help us go forward in the most positive way. One of the things that's small but significant is people like Melinda Carlson and Pat Burke and Jim Springer put up beautiful, and Adela, look at that. We can travel everywhere on Zoom. We are staying in touch with one another and getting to see places and hear from other people as we go through our day. So thanks so much for everybody. And good to see Zoe again.
And here's Zoe, the famous showgirl.
That's right. Thank you, Carolyn, for putting this together today, and we will see you all next week. Take care, Gary.